Hey there, friends, and welcome to another episode of Strange Planet. And if you'd like to get a little deeper into Strange Planet, you might want to consider becoming a premium subscriber. It's real easy to do. Just click on the link in the episode notes, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. You gain access to commercial-free listening. We love our sponsors, but sometimes it's nice to listen uninterrupted. You gain access to bonus episodes. 2 bonus episodes per month produced exclusively for premium subscribers, and you also receive a copy of my newsletter, Inner Sanctum, my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. And again, the link is right there in the episode notes. All right, what is happening in Lake Erie College? Some strange things, strange lights in the sky, a lot of paranormal activity. And we're going to get into that right now with the director of the Department of Education at Lake Erie College, Professional Studies and Assistant Professor of Education, Dr. Greg Rothwell joins us. Greg, welcome to Strange Planet. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So, we hear about I've talked to people about haunted locations, a lot over the past 25, 30 years. Sometimes the people that work there are a little hesitant to talk about it, particularly, people in academia. Somehow, I don't know, maybe they feel it's going to tarnish the reputation of the institution or, I don't know, somehow compromise their academic integrity. But you really embrace this. In fact, you started a paranormal club at Lake Erie College. So tell me a little bit about, did that come first? Were you interested in the paranormal, or did that happen later after you started, walking the halls of Lake Erie College and noticing all these strange things?
Well, I've always been pretty interested in the paranormal prior to me coming to Lake Erie College. But then when I came to Lake Erie College about 5 years ago, I realized that I was entering an institution that not only recognized it, but really embraced their heritage of these ghostly stories on campus. Pretty much every building on campus has some story, some kind of haunting or some kind of some paranormal activity that's been reported. So before I came here, like I said, was interested in it, and it seemed like, wow, this place is very comfortable for me because these are people that can and do accept the possibility that there's something out there that we cannot explain.
You come from West Virginia?
Yes, I'm originally from the northern panhandle of West Virginia, so it's about 2.5 or so hours away from here. Yes,
done lots of shows on West Virginia, and cryptids and ghost stories. And what is it about West Virginia that gives rise to so much, so many paranormal stories and accounts?
It seems, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's government influence or some kind of, secret government testing. Like we have the Mothman, and we have what was the other one? I don't remember the other one that I'm thinking of, but it seems like West Virginia does have a very rooted paranormal background, especially in haunted locations like the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum and the West Virginia State Penitentiary. I've been to both of these places, and my 2 uncles and grandfather actually worked at the penitentiary, and they also, even way back then, would talk about paranormal experiences.
Which one is in Moundsville?
That's the West Virginia State Penitentiary.
Right. I've been to Moundsville. I didn't get a tour inside, but I stood outside, and it's reportedly one of the most haunted locations in America. Yes. And I think it finished, if I'm not mistaken now, it was supposed to be the location for Shawshank Redemption, and then that got changed to, was it the penitentiary in Ohio?
It was the Ohio State Reformatory. That's in Ohio, yeah. And I believe that's in Mansfield.
Right, right. Interesting. All right.
Mhm.
So tell us about Lake Erie College. It's in Painesville, Ohio. How close is
Yes.
that to, let's say, Cleveland? And just tell us, kind of draw some mental images of what the campus looks like, and maybe we can get into a little bit of its history.
Yeah, so Lake Erie College is about 30 minutes east of downtown Cleveland. It's right at the top, right by the lake. If you were to throw a rock a mile north, you would hit Lake Erie. So it's very close to the lake. Painesville is a pretty old town. It's been around since about turn of the 19th century. It's named after a Revolutionary general, um, Edwin or Edward Payne. I don't recall which one's correct, but his last name was Payne, and so they named it after him. But Lake Erie College has been here since 1856. It originated in a town that is west of here in the 1820s, but then it was moved here in 1856 and was primarily a college for girls, which was very, very interesting in the 1850s because women weren't generally welcomed at a lot of higher ed institutions. And what made Lake Erie College special was that it was a institution of higher learning for women, and it was operated entirely by women. So our president was a woman, and all of our professors and students were all women. So that was very unique to Lake Erie College.
Okay, so let's begin with there's a statue on the campus, the Tiberius statue.
Yes.
Tiberius was a dog. This is a statue dedicated to a dog named Tiberius. So
Yes.
let's begin to tell us about this story.
So Tiberius is my favorite, probably my all-time favorite story to tell on campus. Anytime we have visitors, I'll tell this story. But so at the turn of the 20th century, we had a dean of the college here, and she had a dog. And this dog, his name, from my understanding, was Tiberius. And Tiberius had the run of the college. Tiberius would go to class. He would just run all over campus. And he was welcomed as the, I guess, unofficial mascot of the college of the time. And as dogs do, Tiberius one day died. And in 1910, the students, they put together some money and they had a statue made of Tiberius in honor of Tiberius. And this was what we refer to as Tiberius 1. So this is the first one. There's been a series, and I'll go through all of them. And so Tiberius, the memory of Tiberius lasted for years and years and years. But then we fast forward. This is where the now legend of Tiberius begins, and that's in 1957. So our main building on campus is called College Hall. Well, next to College Hall, there was a building called Memorial Hall. And Memorial Hall was literally connected to College Hall. It was, if you're looking at it, to the right. And Memorial Hall and College Hall were primarily where all the action happened on campus. That's where you took classes. That's where the girls lived. And one day in 1957, or one night in 1957, two girls were woken up by a dog, a barking dog on the outside, just barking and barking and barking. And they were like, oh my goodness, what's this dog doing? What's this dog barking at, And so they went outside and they found that there was no dog. And they're like, okay, well, that's strange. But then when they were outside, they noticed that the building was on fire. And so they went upstairs, and there were 19 total girls that were living in Memorial Hall at the time. They got all the girls, they woke up all the girls, and they got them all out safely. Nobody was harmed, nobody died in the fire, and Memorial Hall was destroyed. And later, when they were telling this story, they gave reference, oh, thank goodness that dog was barking, and they started talking about this dog and realized that there wasn't a dog. And so the legend of Tiberius was born as our good luck charm / protector. And so we have a statue currently on campus. Tiberius is the statue on campus right now is Tiberius number 4. There was some vandalism to one. The other one was stolen. Oh, wow. So we've now this is the 4th one, and Tiberius, I believe number 4 has been there a good probably about 25 years and has been safe. So he's our good luck charm.
Right. And I guess what do students do? Touch the statue for good luck? What, before an exam or?
Yeah, during before sporting events or anything that's high pressure, an exam, they'll go and pet Tiberius's nose. You'll see on campus, the students will come by and put a stick in his mouth. So you might walk by and Tiberius has a stick in his mouth, but he's a very beloved character on our campus.
Any sightings of phantom dogs that resemble Tiberius?
Not that I've been told. Not since the 1957 story. We haven't had anyone officially come out and say that they've seen or heard any dogs, but maybe Tiberius is at rest now. I don't know, because he feels he's done his due diligence in saving the college.
All right, so there's just a plethora of ghostly stories. Tell us about Andrew's dorm and Mary Evans. Mary Evans.
Yeah, so this is one story I'm a little bit familiar with. It's not one of the highest, I guess, reported areas, but it has been reported by the students that were living there. It was reported that Mary Evans haunts Andrew's dorm because, from my understanding, they were going to tear down something, and so ever since they were tearing, I don't recall what they were tearing down. But Andrew's dorm is said to be haunted by one of the first presidents of the college, Mary Evans. And just, shadow figures, phantom knockings, things like that is what the students report.
Okay, so now might be a good time to delve into the paranormal club that you've started.
Yeah.
And you do some investigations?
We've done a few on-site investigations, but we just started this club. So where we are right now is in the documentation gathering process. So we've done a few physical investigations, but we've more collected a lot of stories and firsthand accounts of the stories that have been on campus. I've been around a little bit here and there doing some investigations with like the REM pod and the Mel meter, your standard tools of the paranormal trade, and I've gotten some pretty good results. But the paranormal club, it's me and some students, and we've at this point just really collected the stories from current stories or stories from retired professors, for instance, about the paranormal activity on campus.
Do you have an investigation planned in the near future?
Not one yet, but we do want to, since we're in midterms right now. So we're hoping to, at the end of the school year, when most of the student body leaves, we're able to test out. There's a house on campus called Matthew's House that we would like to really get into and do a full-blown investigation. But our main campus building, College Hall, we've done a few things in there. We've done a few things in what's called Morley Music Hall, and also in the library. We've done a little bit of testing as well.
And the Fine Arts Building, I understand President Weaver's chauffeur, Willie, is said to occupy the Fine Arts Building. Yeah,
Willie has supposedly been seen in the green room area, which is now, from my understanding, the current dance studio. And he's been seen just kind of milling around, waiting for the president to be done with the show, because the president was seen to be, or was said to be an avid supporter of all of the shows that we do on campus. And so Willie would bring the president would sit and watch the show, and Willie would just be milling around in the green room. And he is said to have been seen there on multiple occasions.
Have any of your students seen him?
None of my students have seen Willie, but they have gotten some pretty eerie feelings in the area, like some heightened, hair on the neck kind of sensations, but no like visual shadow figures or full body apparitions or anything like that.
There's another spirit inside the Fine Arts Building, reportedly. This was the result, perhaps, of a very tragic situation. There was someone making costumes for the play. For the plays, and she was shot and killed?
Yeah, it's my understanding that it wasn't even on campus. She was a student here. She was in the costume design a portion of the theater productions, and she had gone back home, and I think home was California, and she was actually shot and killed in some kind of an accident or incident back home, and so her spirit must have gravitated back here to a place where she felt most happy, and that was in her design studio. So that there's been accounts of paranormal activity in that section of the building as well.
Are we talking about like full-on apparitions, or what do people see?
I'm not sure about that specific one. I think, from my understanding, it was like shadow figures kind of sighting. I know it wasn't full body apparitions, I can say that. But in that specific area, that was said to be that girl that has come back to that to her happy times, right?
Have you ever attempted, Greg, to capture a EVP, electronic voice phenomena, in any of the buildings on campus?
Yes, I've tried in College Hall, which is one of our more active buildings on campus. I have not tried in the Fine Arts building. There was a time where another college in the area actually came here. They had a paranormal group, and they actually left. They got so spooked that they didn't feel comfortable anymore doing their investigations, because they said whatever they felt or whatever they're experiencing wasn't friendly. So they left. And so I actually am hesitant about going in the Fine Arts building myself to do any investigating because of their experience. So that's one I haven't done yet, just because of that story.
And the College Hall investigation with EVPs, did you come up with anything?
I've not come up with EVPs, but I've come up with a lot of action on my Melmeter. College Hall is probably, other than Tiberius, one of our most celebrated stories on campus. And our main College Hall ghost her name is Stephanie. We actually have a name for her. And so the story of Stephanie goes into the late 1800s, about 1870, from my understanding. And there's a fine line between lore and true fact, right? And I'm going to really touch on both. We know that there was a girl, her name was Stephanie. We know that for a fact. And the story goes like this. So Stephanie was a very introverted student. She was a student here, and she lived in College Hall. She lived on the 4th floor. And her room was on the front-facing section of College Hall. And she had a roommate, and her roommate was pretty popular. And so her roommate would, go out every night, or, just have a good, healthy social life, while Stephanie would stay in. And she would stay in the dorm and read or do whatever else. Well, around her 3rd year there, Stephanie actually found a gentleman who she became she just fell in love. And now the story goes that it was a professor, but the fact is we didn't have any male professors. So, there's a little gray area there. I'm just going to stick with the idea that it was probably just a guy from town.
Right.
Right. So Stephanie fell in love with this gentleman, and she would light a candle in her window to signal that it was okay to come up, that her roommate had left. And so they started this love affair. And as love affairs happen, she ended up becoming pregnant. And of course, in the 1870s, that was a lot different than it is now.
Yeah. Scandal, huge scandal.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And this guy apparently was also married. And of course, double the scandal, right? So she, of course, at this time, she's like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? I want to keep the baby. I want to, get married. I want to make this work. I want to try to make this work. Well, he wasn't having it, right? He wanted no part of the baby, no part of Stephanie anymore. And so she threatened to go public, tell his wife, say, this is This has happened. And so the story goes that one night he goes up when he knows that she's alone, that her candle was lit, right? And he goes up, he takes her, murders her, then takes her to our bell tower and has her arranged in the bell tower to make it look like she had committed suicide.
Right. She's found hanging there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the perfect cover up, right?
Yes.
Because who's gonna believe the truth in the 1870s? And so for years and years and years, people have told the story about Stephanie and how she fell in love and she ended up with this baby and she committed suicide when the man denied her. Well, in 2014, I believe it was, we had a pretty well-known psychic medium here on campus, and he spoke to Stephanie.
Wow.
And she told him the real story. And so now when we tell the Stephanie story, we talk about the murder. And we talk about, not the fact that she killed herself, but rather that she was murdered.
Wow. Did the psychic who came to Lake Erie College know the backstory, or did you just say, do you feel any presences here?
He went on a tour around campus, and when he went to College Hall, he picked up on a girl, and that she was murdered, and that her name was Stephanie, and he actually talked to her. And our people here are faculty and staff and security and pretty much anybody that's in the building has a story about seeing Stephanie.
Wow. Listen, we're going to take a quick time out. Dr. Greg Rothwell is joining us from Lake Erie College in Paynesville, Ohio. We'll take a quick time out, come back, and discuss further. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Dr. Greg Rothwell is the director of the Department of Education and Professional Studies and an assistant professor of education at Lake Erie College, which was founded in 1856 and located, I guess, about 30 miles from Cleveland, Ohio, and lots of paranormal activity. And I found out about Lake Erie College. A colleague of yours, Greg, sent me a photograph he took on campus, just hoping to capture this beautiful crescent moon over the campus, and there were these 2 strange lights there, which I don't know, hard to say what's going on there. Maybe we can come back to the photo in a moment, but we were talking about Stephanie, perhaps the most famous ghost at Lake Erie College. She was a resident in College Hall. This is the first building that was on the campus, and this is when, well, it was an all-girls school at the time. She was murdered, apparently, and her body was found hanging in the bell tower. It was later determined by a psychic who came that she was, in fact, murdered. It wasn't suicide. Were there newspaper accounts at the time of of what happened to Stephanie? What were the newspaper accounts of this?
I have been searching far and wide for any newspaper accounts of this. We actually have a college archives that my next step with the Paranormal Club is to go down and start to do the research, finding a name or a picture, like a last name to Stephanie, like who really is Stephanie. Now that we know the real story, we want to really know the girl. And but the Painesville archives that I've looked in, there has been no mention of this murder or death or anything. So I just at this moment, I'm just writing that off as in, bad press being kind of, hushed by, I don't know if it was the college or the town or anything like that. But if I'm a new college starting up, I probably don't want that press in a newspaper.
Exactly. And who knows? I mean, now we're into the realm of speculation, but if the person who murdered her was a prominent member of Painesville, perhaps, he had some influence with the newspaper, and, it was all hush-hush. My understanding is that the fourth floor at College Hall was closed down, and also the access to the bell tower was closed down in the 1970s. What was going on there?
Well, from what I understand and what I've been told through my research is that the activity got so bad on the fourth floor, as far as people seeing things, people experiencing things, and I think it was easy to shut it down because also with the fact that it was probably getting a little disrepaired too. They're like, let's just seal it off, and so even today it's sealed off, not necessarily out of the ill repair part, but we just haven't used it in a lot of years. And I think it would take some effort to open it back up. But from what I've been told is the real motivation behind that was that there was so much activity that not only did they seal it off, but there was a person of power that forbade the students to even mention Stephanie's name. This story of Stephanie is old. People for generations have been telling this story. So it's definitely not something that we just came up with. It's been told for generations and generations of students.
And my understanding is there have been some sightings of Stephanie. Some paranormal investigators visited the campus and they saw her.
We could probably do a whole hour on all of the sightings of Stephanie, but probably one of the most concrete examples of a sighting was this group of paranormal investigators that came to campus, and they investigated and then they left. And when they were leaving, they pointed their camera up at College Hall, which I do pretty frequently, by the way, just to see if I could recreate it. But it was in the 90s, and of course, back then you had to send your film away to get it produced. And so when they got the camera back, when they got the photos back, they noticed that there was a full figure apparition in a fourth floor window that looked like a girl. And if you just go to Google and you type Stephanie Lake Erie College and do a simple image search, you're going to see the photo there.
Wow.
And I tell everybody that visits campus that wants some concrete evidence of this full body aberration, it's right there. You can't deny it.
Do people see lights where, she would keep the lights on to, to signal her paramour that it was safe to come up into the building and meet her? Do people still see lights on the fourth floor, even though it's closed off?
Yeah, the fourth floor lights will come on and off on occasion for no reason. I know the only people that have access to that fourth floor now are maintenance and security, and they really don't have any reason or cause to go up to the fourth floor, especially in the evening. You could be driving by and then just see one of the random fourth floor lights on. And that's very strange. Actually, it was kind of perfect. We did a ghost tour on campus in October, and I was in charge. We all had a story that we were telling, like certain volunteers, and I was in charge of the Stephanie story. And one of the people told me, or he actually emailed me later on and said, "Oh, nice touch having the fourth floor light on." that night. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? So apparently he had left campus and saw that the fourth floor light was on after I said sometimes the fourth floor lights are on. He thought it was me doing that, and it wasn't. So that was kind of cool.
Um,
I
I mean, is there even electricity hooked up in the fourth floor?
There is, but they've from my understanding they've just shut the breakers off because it's not really needed.
And I don't know. I would imagine if you're new at Lake Erie College, that might be kind of a dare or a bet to get up into the fourth floor, or maybe, I don't know, climb up into the bell tower. Has anyone ever tried that?
Yes, people have tried that, and pretty much the end result is that they don't really want to talk about the things they experience.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, you know how students are. Sometimes they go places they're not supposed to, and I've had a couple tell me that they did sneak up there and were pretty much affected long term by things that they saw or experienced.
Is Lake Erie College becoming famous among, the professional ghost hunters? Are they, clamoring to get there and doing their own investigations? Has it become, almost maybe even a nuisance?
We've had probably every other week we have someone call and want to come, and really we discourage it because we don't want just the random person coming to either provoke or to open up perhaps a portal that's unwanted. We want to embrace the spirits that we have and not really cause them any discomfort or give them any reason to elevate the experiences or their actions. We want to cohabitate with them and not necessarily cause them any harm. And that's one of the concerns we have about a lot of outside groups coming in, is that they might cause something to either open up or aggravate the ones that are here.
Greg, we'll take another time out back with more of our conversation about Lake Erie College. Stay with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. And we are back with Dr. Greg Rothwell from Lake Erie College, founded in 1856, just located maybe 30 miles from Cleveland, and the source of a great deal of paranormal activity. There's a building on the campus known as the train station. It's the Morley Music Building. You referenced it earlier. What's happening there?
Well, our resident ghost that we have in Morley Hall is actually Mrs. Morley, for whom the hall's named after. One of the stories, there's 2 main stories that I like to tell about Morley Hall. One is Mrs. Morley has 2 very distinct, she doesn't like certain things, and those 2 things are smoking and bad music. For some reason, those are her 2. And the first smoking is in the 1970s and 80s, when everyone smoked indoors and things like that. It seems like so long ago now. Students would be there practicing, and in the basement there's practice rooms, and they'd be in there practicing piano and whatever else. And they would always have, if they smoked, they would have the ashtray on the piano. And there were 2 or 3 different accounts from different people at different times of the same exact activity. And that was that the ashtray actually flew off the piano.
Wow.
Because Mrs. Morley was not happy with them smoking in her building. A couple other examples of her not liking bad music, or one example was that they had some kind of a drum group there, and this is several years ago, and they recorded it. And so they were recording it, and the live sound of the drum group was over the PA system, this high-pitched squeaking kind of backfeed sound, right, from the speakers. And so they stopped, and they didn't know what was going on. And so then it stopped, and then they continued performing. Well, when they went back and reviewed the tapes, that high-pitched squeal wasn't on the tapes. It was only live.
Wow.
And I actually have 2 examples that are brand new. One from Martin Luther King Day, just in January.
Yeah.
We had an event there, and a community event, and the sound system just stopped working. And this is a pretty nice sound system. I use it pretty often. And it just stopped. Like there was no, so all of the groups that were there had to sing a cappella because there was no sound system. And then just this past weekend, we had an event for creative writing. And the gentleman that was there to print off some of the score sheets, it was a competition. He brought his printer in, he brought his laptop in, and he had a brand new ink cartridge that he was going to use just for this purpose. And so he opened his computer and he started to print, and his computer just shut off. And he's like, well, that's kind of weird. It's never happened before. And so he got it back on and he started printing. And about 4 pages in on this brand new cartridge, it went dry. It wouldn't print anymore. So these are just little kind of anecdotal stories that we tell, little unexplained events that happened in Morley Hall. But Mrs. Morley is said to just not like either bad music or smoking. Other than that, she's a pretty nice ghost.
Tell me about, I'm not sure when this happened, but there's Weaver Auditorium, and there were some students, 2 students in there one night, I presume. One was practicing for a recital. The other one was keeping her company. And I don't know, how do we describe this? Some kind of a time slip or a portal or something. Something strange happened.
Well, I think this is relating to the fact that this is actually going back to the psychic medium that we had here. He also told us, and you referred to it as a train station kind of idea, that there is a portal inside of Morley Hall where there's lots of people just coming in and out to visit. And from my understanding, that story goes, this isn't one of my most familiar stories, but there was a time slip. There was a moment when they realized that it was much later, hours have passed since they started practicing, and they felt like they were only there for like 5 minutes. So that is one of the phenomenons that happened in Morley Hall, but it is known by our psychic medium that was here. He just saw just scores of people just like lined up in the auditorium, in the where the audience would sit, just coming in and out of this portal.
Right. I'm just reading here about the 2 that were practicing for the recital. They saw 2 rows of people standing in front pews in the middle of the auditorium, and based on the way they were dressed, they looked like they were from the early 1900s.
Yes, I'm glad you reminded me of that story. Yes, that actually was reported as well, and I think that has to do with whatever portal exists in that building, from people coming in and out just to visit. It is also said that Stephanie from College Hall has also been seen in Morley Hall on occasion. She will come over to that hall as well.
Any theories as to what's happening in Morley Hall? I mean, sometimes we hear about these types of activities in proximity to old burial grounds or disturbed burial mounds. We mentioned Moundsville, West Virginia earlier. Any connection there, do you think?
I'm not entirely sure. I would guess that there was some sort of Native American burial grounds in the area when Paynesville was established, just, knowing the history of the area. I will say, just a little side note here, that we did have a Native American museum on campus for a while. It was in the basement of one of our buildings. This building's known as Kilcawley. And things in the cases would move around overnight. Like they would even switch cases.
Wow.
So there is a little Native American, I guess, connection there. But as far as burial grounds, I don't think anything's ever been confirmed, but I wouldn't doubt that there might be some influence there.
And speaking of Kilcawley Hall, tell me about Mrs. Murray.
So Murray Hall, as it used to be called, it's now called Kilcawley. It is said that Mrs. Murray haunts Kilcawley. One story from a lady who used to be the assistant to the president, her daughter actually works here with me, and she firsthand told me this story. So I got a couple of these stories from firsthand accounts. And she had set up, there's a big boardroom in the middle of this building, and she had set up cups for coffee and plates and things like that that evening because they were going to have a board meeting the next day. And they were going to discuss demolishing one of the dorms to then build a new dorm or something along those lines. So she set up the cups, the plates, the napkins, everything, all the papers, and she left for the day, came back the next morning, and they were thrown all over the room. And they attribute that to the topic of demolishing one of the dorms being a sensitive topic to that particular ghost. And we're going to assume it was her, if not another one. But that's the story behind that. And of course, having the coffee maker turn on and off, the custodian would be like, hey, or no, the assistant to the president would tell the custodians, hey, thanks for turning on the coffee maker. Well, I didn't turn on the coffee maker. Little things like that. It's more fun stories than anything. But the cups and plates thrown about seem to be the most drastic example of paranormal activity in that room.
Speaking of the Kilcawley building, there was, and we started the program talking about Tiberius, kind of the school mascot at Lake Erie College, and there's another Tiberius story, or related to Tiberius, I suppose, and it has to do with one of the board members, I guess, maybe in the 1930s, and Anne Kilcawley in 1933. Having some dreams. There was a black dog running towards her. Do you remember that story?
I did catch wind of that. I'm not too familiar with that exact story, but I know that the Kilcawleys is who Kilcawley Hall is named after they renovated it. But I'm not entirely certain with that story, to be honest.
All right, let me just read the account I have here, and then it might ring a bell. So this Anne Kilcawley, she's a board member, 1933 Christmas. She started having dreams of a black dog running towards her. And the dream would, it was repetitive. It would continue for several nights. And then she decided to call the college president to see if something was amiss. And the president told her the college desperately needed money to stay open. And so after she heard this, she immediately called a board meeting, and everyone was seated. She locked the door to the room, and she said, no one's leaving this room until we've raised enough money to save the college. And wouldn't you know it, the money was raised. And she credited Tiberius coming to her in her dreams that saved the college.
I completely forgot about that story. Yes, I did know about that one. That was another example, and it would have happened in Kilcawley in the boardroom. That is another example of how Tiberius brings us luck. But yes, I'm glad you reminded me of that one. I might have to go tell a couple people that story today.
It's such lore and legend happening at Lake Erie College. Any plans to document this all in a book, Greg?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty good goal, I guess, for the Paranormal Club. We would be able to do that. I'm sure there would be lots of people to buy it. Because like I said, these stories have gone on and on and on from generation to generation. There's even small kids that come here, grade school kids that know these stories. So it's definitely, if these are proven to be wrong or inaccurate, I think they're still going to exist in our lore and our popular culture here on the campus, because it really makes us who we are as a campus.
Lots of seances, students holding late night seances or Ouija board sessions. Is that a popular thing to
I
do?
certainly hope not. Maybe that's what caused the portal in Morley Hall to open, but I discourage those, definitely, those sorts of sessions. If anyone ever asks me, I definitely discourage those, because you could open up something that you definitely either can't or don't know how to close.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I can't believe that Ouija boards are still marketed as a toy
Yeah.
in place like Toys R Us. They're not to be trifled with. Has anyone ever, a student ever, I don't know, left the school, like, I don't know, midterm, withdrawn because of a scare?
I don't think of a particular one, but I do know of one that had what we would consider an attachment.
Oh,
And this attachment would visit the student in her dorm, and she would wake up to this figure, and it eventually would wane after basically fighting it with not only her faith, but just telling it to leave her alone. But this figure would continuously come in her dreams while she came home. But this was the only instance that I've ever heard of someone having an attachment due to an exposure to our campus. I think it might have been an isolated event, and who knows, maybe she was trying to play with a Ouija board.
how do your colleagues feel about the paranormal club and some of these legends? Let's say some of the more skeptical members of the faculty.
I think they appreciate it for who we are as an identity. They appreciate the fact that I am, in essence, a skeptic. I don't believe these stories until I either get firsthand accounts or really come down to the facts of using my instruments like a millimeter or a REM pod to actually document the activity and see it with my own eyes. So where psychic mediums come in, sure, I believe that, and believe people that do have a gift are able to do that, because, like I said, that psychic medium was able to know that there was a girl in College Hall and she was under those circumstances, right? So it seems that, to me, this data that is collected by people like psychic mediums or through my instruments, I think my colleagues appreciate not only taking account our identity through these stories, but also the fact that I'm using somewhat of a scientific approach to validating these stories.
Let's talk as we get ready to close off here about the photograph that your colleague at the college sent me. Again, and we'll insert it into the video. And for those listening, we can just kind of describe, a photograph of a crescent moon, beautiful evening, shining down on the college campus, and then just, I think, from memory, sort of above and to the left, as we're looking at the photo of the crescent moon, we see these two strange lights in the sky. I'm assuming, we've ruled out aircraft, helicopters, Elon Musk's Starlink. He showed you the photo.
Yes.
What did you make of it?
Well, I definitely thought it was strange, but as a skeptic, I decided that I was going to try to debunk it. And last night, actually, just last night, it was a perfect night. It resembled that night a lot. A clear night, beautiful, stars were out. So I went out last night and I decided to try to take some pictures. And I was not able to reproduce the results that he got. And when George sent me those, that picture he took, that was instantly what I thought, okay, that's cool, but I'm going to try to debunk it. And I was not able to last night under similar circumstances. So I don't know. Our government admits that there's things in the sky now that we can't explain. And until we know what it is, all the possibilities are out there.
Any Air Force bases near Paynesville?
Not near Paynesville. They're closer to Cleveland, about 30 miles away. But I would imagine you would hear something like that if they're in the air. But I mean, it is possible. But my indication, or my guess is that it was not an aircraft, because they seem to be pretty. The two entities were pretty aligned. and pretty close together.
Right. Did anyone else on campus report seeing unidentified flying objects that night?
Nope, not that night, no, or any night for that matter, but no.
Well, we might possibly be adding UFOs, ETs to the long list of strange activity at Lake Erie College. Greg, great meeting you. Thank you so much, and stay in touch. If there's anything else happening there that we need to know about, let me know.
Okay, sounds good.
Dr. Greg Rothwell, Lake Erie College. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Hello, friends, and welcome once again to another episode of Strange Planet. And as I always say, if you'd like to get a little deeper into Strange Planet, it's real easy to do. Just click on the link in the episode notes, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, and you can become a premium subscriber. And that gets you access to commercial-free listening. As much as we love our sponsors, sometimes it's nice to listen uninterrupted. You also receive 2 bonus episodes per month that are produced exclusively for premium subscribers, and you also receive my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. All right, a great pleasure to welcome back to Strange Planet Captain Randy Cramer, Colonel Randy Cramer, who has been with us before talking about the Secret Soldier program and operating off-world on bases on the Moon and Mars. And he's going to be coming to Toronto on April 20th as part of the Contact and Disclosure Symposium. The link for that, contact and disclosuresymposium.com, is in the episode notes as well. It's April 20th here in Toronto at the Off-World Bar. I may have to go down and check that out. I mean, it just sounds like a lot of fun. And we have, as I say, spoken with Colonel Randy Cramer before. He's the Public Relations Officer and spokesperson for the command staff at the United States Marine Corps' Secret Space Program, or the Covert Space Program, arm of the Marine Corps. Colonel Cramer has spent 30 years on off-world assignments and the occasional diplomatic mission. He spent his first 17 years in the MDF on the Red Planet. Then he was offered a commission and the opportunity to attend flight school, which he eagerly accepted. He then spent 3 years aboard the EDFss Nautilus with the prime mission of patrolling the solar system. He then spent 2 years stationed on the off-world of Sonora, assisting the Sonorans with invading hostile neighbors, for which his accomplishments earned him the promotion to major. He was then stationed aboard the EDFss Farragut. Later in his career, he was given a field promotion to full colonel to finish the mission and lead his team to success. After his 30-year tour of duty, Colonel Cramer returned to civilian life for the next big challenge of mastering his own brain through a dedicated practice of meditation to break through the memory repression process. Over time, creating a tested protocol to assist others in the process of memory retrieval. After receiving total recall, his brigadier general reached out to him to ask him to take on the challenge of being the new USMCss public relations officer, which he accepted with some reservations. Over time, it became abundantly clear that teaching civilians psionic self-mastery via the same methods taught to USMCss psionic specialists and the USMCss Psionics Manual, teaching in-person classes for many years before finally launching online courses at Captain RandyCramer.com. Again, the link in the episode notes. A platform that serves hundreds of students in the effort to master their own brains and minds with true scientific method and technique to develop psionic skills. Wow, that's a mouthful. Colonel Randy Cramer, welcome back to Strange Planet. How are you?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. Sorry about the confusion with the website. We secured the name for the website before my brigadier and I discussed whether we were going with the full rank, and we decided that we were. So there's some changes that we're in the middle of making, and some people may be a little confused by that, but same person, just,
Right.
Elevated position of authority here.
Well, if they just Google Randy Cramer with a C, Cramer with a C,
up.
School of Psionics, it'll come up. All right.
Yeah, I would have grabbed that website, but they wanted like $2,000 for that one. And I was like, I'm not giving you $2,000 for that.
As I mentioned, you'll be coming to Toronto at the Off-World Bar April 20th, and that is the Contact and Disclosure Symposium, link in the episode notes. Let's just, for those who aren't familiar with the incredible backstory, just kind of give us the Reader's Digest version of your off-world tours.
Sure. Crunched up version is early programs in the creation of augmented soldiers ended up with the creation of me, and then a training period, and then a deployment period when I was 17 years old to do a little over 17 years in the MDF, and then getting sent to the Farragut, and then to, it was the Nautilus first, and then to Sonora, and then to the Farragut. So that was my whole tour of progressing through infantry up to clawing my way to sergeant major, getting to go to flight school, and then going to a basic piloting position where we were just doing patrols. And then after this, before the Sonoran War, but right after my deployment on the Nautilus, they decided, because there was a small number of personnel who were qualified pilots but also had qualified infantry experience, they squished us together into a special unit of special forces soldiers that could do their own flying. So there was sort of some reason for doing that. Anyway, so we did high value target stuff for a number of years, and kind of did that until the Sonoran War, which was about 2 years. We have a trade relationship with them that is such that it felt to be in our interest to jump in and be involved the best that we could, and sorted that out. Ended up sort of in a pretty committed relationship with a local woman, and she fathered a son to me who still lives with her there, which is, I don't know, people always seem to think that's an interesting because it's a salacious part or something like that. But, soldiers overseas meet women and have kids sometimes.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be the first time that's happened. It just
talk about a long-term or a long, what do they call that? There's bi-coastal relationships, and then there's
it's a long distance.
There you go.
I look forward to the opportunity to being able to see them and give my son a hug. That would be nice. But at the moment, I'm here, they're there, which is actually fine because he's safer there. He's in a better situation there than he would be here. It would be way rougher for him to be here than it would for him to be there at the moment. So I'm perfectly content for him to be there. And then after that, I was sent back to the Farragut and finished out my tour of duty there. So been a lot of places, done a lot of things, and killed a lot of stuff. So that's what Marines do.
The acronym EDF, just explain in terms of the Secret Space Fleet what EDF stands for.
Stands for Earth Defense Force. The various departments and programs from around the world that are born from different state military organizations, including the U.S. military, UK military, and other global military organizations, parcel personnel into this larger cooperative unit that is the umbrella of the EDF, or the Earth Defense Force. So personnel aren't technically no longer members of their state militaries. They are still members of their state militaries, but they become members of the EDF, and they become contracted members of this larger umbrella organization so that it can function as a total umbrella of protection and interaction in global Terran interests, which we are the Terrans. So when I talk about Terran interests, we're talking about us human beings on this planet.
You mentioned Sonora. Where is that in the solar system, or is it outside the solar system?
It's so the star system that it's in is called Rudoc, which is the knee of Cassiopeia. So, and Rudoc means knee. But if you were to look at Cassiopeia, and there's, I don't know, 7 or 8 stars or something like that, and the star that's the knee is called Rudoc. That's the star system that they live in, that the planet is in.
And getting back to the EDF for a moment, you served aboard the Nautilus and the Farragut. How many? Just maybe kind of give us a sense of what these vessels are like how large, and then also how many vessels roughly in the EDF.
Well, I can certainly describe the size of the vessel a bit. So the Nautilus is a very long, slender vehicle that's it's an aircraft carrier in space. So it's probably almost, though, a mile long. It's pretty big, and has, I want to say it was 16 or more air wings, which you still call them air wings. And your plane is actually still called a plane, even though it's not a plane at all, but it's because a ship is a big vehicle. So in Navy terminology, a ship is a big vehicle, a small boat is a boat, a plane is a plane. There's this terminology that you couldn't just call everything a spaceship because you're in space now. You can't, just completely upturn the terminology. So these super advanced aircraft that are fighter equipped, they're still called planes. So, it's, pilots to your planes is still something that you still call it your plane, but it's not a propeller airplane in any sense of the word, but we still use that terminology. It had 3 sections. It had the front command section, had a rear engineering section, and then it had the flight deck section. The flight deck sections where all the pilots and all the flight crew personnel live and work. Command section's off limits. There's only times I could probably count on one hand that I was ever brought into the command section to talk to a senior officer there. Most of the time they come out of the command section to talk to you. Very rarely go into the command section. And I'd never even been in the engineering section. It's forbidden. There's a door, and if you do not have clearance, you do not go past that door. Engineers and the tech people live in that section. They work in that section, and they don't come into the flight deck section either. So there's a door, but very rarely does anybody ever go through it, except the people who occasionally need to go back and forth, and officers more than anything else. But the personnel there are completely separated and sectioned off. So it's really literally compartmentalized in a very, very distinct way. The Farragut was a little boxier, a little more kind of rectangular shaped, interestingly enough. So it was a little wider, a little shorter. And it had, I want to say about the same number, about 16 special forces units. We used to refer to it as the Swiss Army knife of the fleet. These are 16 special forces units that have very specific training and missions. And I would not be appropriate for me to go down a list of what all those were. Our unit was infantry trained pilots, which is not a ton of people who are infantry trained and then become pilots. And we were rapid insertion, high value target team. So we would rapidly insert into a zone, and high value targets are either the kind of high value targets that you bring back or the kind that you make sure never leave again. So they're either a keeper or a stayer. And then, I mean, that was mostly what we did, was just get in real quick, either to rescue high value targets or to terminate high value targets. But everybody's mission was very specific and very unique. And so it was, if the Farragut showed up, you had a lot of interesting options for special forces tacticians to go with, because you had all these very different and distinct special forces teams operating on that vehicle. It was a very different environment. They had morale officers, like a bunch of them, whose job was just to go around and like give you a thumbs up and make sure you were doing all right, and go, "Hey, you doing all right? Everything good? You kicking ass and taking names?" And you're like, "Yeah." And they, "All right." And they give you a thumbs up and go, "Cool." And like, that was just their job, was just to kind of go around and cheerlead everybody and go, "How you doing?" And keep doing. Like, I'm not sure why, and of all the places I'd ever been in the service, why this one place they felt they needed all these morale officers to go around and give everybody a thumbs up and cheerlead them all the time. But for some reason, they did. But to me, it was just it was a little out of place, because most of the places I'd ever have to been and served, there was not people running around going, "How you doing?" and giving you a thumbs up. So it was a little surreal sometimes. But for some reason, they decided that we needed a bunch of morale officers to make sure we knew we were doing a great job and give us thumbs up all day long.
And roughly how many in the EDF fleet?
That is a classified number that I could not tell you, even if I wanted to.
Okay.
But to be honest, I don't think I know the exact number. I mean, it's a classified number, then, unless I would have a need to know. But let's just say it's hundreds. More hundreds or more than hundreds. I mean, it's not a few, it's not a couple of dozen, it's a bunch. Like, I can say that, but I don't even think I know the exact number. But if I did, I still wouldn't be able to tell you.
One more question relating to your pre-civilian career, and then we'll take a time out, come back, and we'll get into psionics. Sure. So which, let's say, alien civilizations are on side with the EDF that we might be familiar with, and you know, who are wearing the black hats?
That's a complicated issue, because let me try and take this one from the top. So currently, we engage with, trade information and or material with a number of species which is over 1,000. Okay, so there's a lot of other species that we are engaging with at the moment, but we're still have barely scratched the surface with the technologically advanced civilizations within our own galaxy, just our own galaxy, not even other galaxies which we can still travel to. That's, you know, not a limitation, but just within our own galaxy, it's somewhere around the number 235,000 civilized spacefaring worlds in our own solar system. So if we've scratched about 1,000 out of 235,000, well, then we only got 234 more thousand to go before we've met everybody in the neighborhood, right? So we're cruising along, but it's going to take more than a minute still before we get familiar with everybody. Most of the information that goes around talking about friends and foes is usually 20 years old. So most of the information that people talk about that goes around, that I hear people talking about on the internet every once in a while, mentioning names, it's so old news. It's not even like what's happening concurrently. What's happening concurrently is incredibly different than just what was occurring 10 years ago and what was happening before that, because of this very complicated relationship that we have with the intergalactic community, as we have signed treaties guaranteeing that we would do certain things as we enter into this relationship with our intergalactic friends and neighbors, which is one of the main things, which is an intergalactic norm that is required of worlds who are coming into their being with the intergalactic community, is you cannot be an intergalactic participant and tell your people that there's no aliens. You can't lie to your civilian population while you're engaging in trade and diplomacy and so forth. Like, there's an understanding that some civilizations go through this process, so it's not like we're the first ones to ever go through this process, and that it's not the first time that a planetary civilization has chosen to tell its people, no, nothing to see here, while they try and sort it out, behind the scenes. But there's a point where, okay, we're moving forward. You got to tell everybody. And so let's just say the people on our side of the diplomacy arm of that said, okay, we promise. Decades ago, the first deadline, you want to know when the first deadline was? 1979.
Wow.
We were supposed to have disclosure in 1979.
What happened?
That's when it was supposed to happen, which is why Steven Spielberg made Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1978. It was preparatory. It was like supposed to happen the next year. It was supposed to happen right after that. And then it was, well, we need a delay. We need a continuance for another 3 years. Okay. And we need another one. Okay. And we need another one. Okay. And we need another one. Okay. But there's a limit to how many continuances that you can keep asking for. So we've come to this point where the intergalactic community has said, hey, so we told you that you only had so many of these that you could ask for. We think you're dragging your feet now. We don't think that this is a reasonable request anymore. So now we're going to issue a different deadline. And if you don't do something by this date, we're going to do it for you.
Are you able to share the date?
Let's just say that is approaching quickly, and that there is a lot of conversation at the moment about whether or not and how that's going to take place. And we have every indication that in April of last year, so about almost a year ago now, we had a system breach, meaning our solar system was breached by a large fleet of an invading force of an extraterrestrial presence, which there's some confusion, deliberate confusion, within the community at large and within the military intelligence community at large on who exactly these people are and whether they're good or bad. And that would really depend on the person saying that. So, for example, if you were a senior officer that found yourself more aligned with the Neuschwabenländer fleet, the Nachtwaffen fleet, the Nazi fleet, and you thought that was a good thing, and someone was coming to kick the crap out of the Nazis, you might say, well, this is a bad thing. But if you were on the other side of that discussion, you might say, oh, no, this is a good thing. And the thing that we are finding most horrifying as this year has unfolded are the sheer number of people that we didn't really expect would be more pro-Nazi than we thought that they would be. It's a shocking number. It's still not above 50%. Let's just be perfectly clear that Nazi philosophy as it exists is a minority philosophy. There are a minority of human beings all over on planet Earth in any grouping that would say this is a good idea. But sometimes you get personnel within military intelligence groups because of very specific targeting or getting people into certain desks or positions in which that number shifts a little bit because they've put a concerted effort into, like I said, trying to put people into chairs, into desks, and into positions so that they have some kind of competing cadre of senior personnel. So what we're really finding internally is the problem, and why this is going to be a mess to sort out is the number of people who are just like, we're Nazis and we love it. And then the people who've been saying, no, we don't like Nazis. And now they're like, nah, actually, we kind of like them now. They're like, they've flipped-flopped. Their true opinion is coming forward now. And we're realizing that what we have is a very, very, they're a tick that's dug in deep. And there's no way that you're going to extract this tick dug in deep without a real messy kerfuffle. And so as this has been playing itself out above us in the skies, in space, a lot of people have died this year. A lot of personnel have lost their lives this year. A lot of people have died. This has been a really, really horrendous war event. And we simply have not seen it hit landfall in a violent way yet. What we have seen are refugees. We've seen lots of refugees making emergency landings, getting pushed back down into Terran space. Two public examples of that, or examples of that which have become public. There was a craft that landed in the backyard in Las Vegas. People remember that event?
Yep.
Okay, so key things about this. So the dash cam or the body cam footage from the cop that caught it coming down through the sky. It looked like, it was described as a green fireball. That green plasma ejection, which is what it is, it's not on fire. If it was on fire, it would be like orange on fire. I've seen ships come down on fire, and it's like hot yellow, orange, red, tail coming off of it, coming down in a straight line to a crash. That's a crash. The green plasma ejection is actually it's an international, intergalactic symbol for a vehicle making an emergency landing. So if you ever see a spacecraft, if you ever see a UFO, a UAP that's got this green fire halo around it, or it looks like it's got it's engulfed in green fire, it's not on fire. It is quite literally flashing light, colored light saying, we're coming in for an emergency landing. Right. So you have that one that came in. They were able to land, repair whatever they needed to repair within 15 or 20 minutes from the record, and then got back in and left. But in that amount of time, got out. Several of them got out, came up to the house, literally like knocked on the back door and were like, hey, we had to land in your backyard. But people were like, oh my God, what's happening? There was a little freak out there. So it was a very interesting incident, and that so much of it was caught and recorded. And then there was an incident, not at the first of the year, I want to say it was on the first, in which there were reported to be these 8 or 9 footers that appeared at this mall in Miami. There's a ton of confusion around that story, but as near as we can tell, the accurate parts of the story are that 3 8 to 9 footers showed up in this mall, and people freaked out and panicked and made a run for it. And then the cops called in every car in the city of Miami, like 200 and some cop cars. Every car that was on, that was every car. So you better hope that there isn't an armed robbery or a shooting or something in another neighborhood, because they literally called every cop car in Miami to surround the mall. And there were people reporting as they were leaving, they were getting their phones out. Give me your phone. They were having their phones checked for pictures and videos. So a lot of people couldn't get out with pictures or video. But we are pretty sure that that was another emergency landing. They didn't want to just come to the mall, that they had to land. They landed in the parking lot, right, to make a crash landing in the back somewhere. And then we're basically wandering in going, hey, we're lost. But because they're so tall, everyone just freaked out and just started running and screaming and turned into a big incident. But we have numerous other cases of which have not, leaked into the public view in any way, shape, or form, of other cases like this, where vehicles have had to come down in an emergency because they were being pushed down from the system because they tried to get around the conflict and took a hit or got damaged by something and had to make an emergency landing. That's happening a lot. So this is going to be my last thing I'm going to say on this one, and then you can ask me another question. What we think is the most likely thing that's going to occur at this point before we see any kind of a mass landing or a mass event is something called the contingency 39C. And a contingency 39C is a vehicle that comes down into a major metropolitan area in such a way that you can't shut it down because everyone's pulling out their phones and streaming it instantly, and the news people are there instantly. I would say that it was lucky in some ways that the Miami Police Department was actually able to lock this down with the presence and the show up that they did. But we're this close before we get an incident where they're not going to be able to lock it down. They're not going to be able to shut it up. They're not going to be able to make it quiet, and it's going to get everywhere. And then the genie's out of the bottle for sure. And then everything's going to change at that moment for sure. And if that doesn't happen first, then we're still approaching a mass landing event sometime soon.
Wow. All right. Colonel Randy Cramer is with us. And again, we'll be appearing via Zoom at the Contact and Disclosure Symposium, April 20th. The link for all the details and to order tickets in the episode notes. Back with more of our conversation right after these. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. We're back with Colonel Randy Cramer. All right, so let's get into psionics. What are psionics?
Well, at its most basic, psionics are your mind powers. Like at its most basic and fundamental. In terms of physics, it's a physics energy, right? It's physical in the physical universe. It can kind of be broken down into Newtonian and mathematical laws and so forth. And the first law of psionics is that all thought produces psionic energy. And so essentially everything that your brain does is producing amounts of psionic energy. Now, most people are producing psionic energy in what we call a low threshold, somewhere between under 5 and maybe a little under 10 psions per second, which is how we measure it in the laboratory when we're doing laboratory tests. I have to do an explanation sometimes that psionics in a laboratory and psionics in a field is like physics in the lab and physics in the field. There's a different way that we look at it and measure it when we're doing a laboratory experiment versus how you do it out in real life when you're trying to make something happen. There's a little bit of a difference there, but it's still the same rules, same math. And so most psionic abilities, if you're talking about things like telepathy, telekinesis, remote viewing, all the abilities, and there's like a ton of individual skill sets, we call them psionic skills, that we can list as psionic abilities, psionic skills, require a different threshold. So, which is usually over 10 or 15 psions per second minimum before you start to see things kind of happen. So most people are experiencing this level of psionic operation, which they're usually not experiencing much of anything. Sometimes, though, people are bumping above. They hit above that 10 or 15, and they kind of bump up and down. They just this wave that's going up and down, and they might experience something that's like, ooh, I had an experience. I saw something, or I heard something that was psionic, not like a bird tweeting, but you heard something, or you saw something, or you just something flashed into your head like a camera picture that just went boom. Like that's hitting a psionic threshold. But most people, when they do that, it happens by accident. It doesn't happen on purpose. It happens just because these natural waves are going up and down. So the psionics manual, as special section personnel teach it and learn it, I've crunched into a civilian system of here's how you train and develop your brain and your psionic skills to get your threshold above that 10, 15 psions per second on purpose. And here's how we do that. That's the whole point of the curriculum, is to teach people how to go from the most beginning basic step 0 to step 1, 2, 3, 4 on how you train your brain, how you build the muscle of your brain that you need to build in order to get those psions per second, again, elevated, and then how to develop and practice and hone very specific skills using very specific techniques that get specific development in certain areas of psionic use and development for your real life experience. So the whole goal is to take a student that can know nothing. Students can know nothing. They can never have meditated before. They can never have taken a class before. They can never have read a book before. They can know nothing and come in the door, and we're going to start at square 0 and go, okay, here's where we start. Here's how your brain works. Here's how your brain waves work. Here's what brainwave states are. Here's how you make those brainwaves happen on purpose, which is called meditation. And here's how meditation, I often do this, is this curling motion. Meditation is the curls that build your brain muscle. Building that brain muscle capacity is what gets you above certain psions per second. Focusing on certain skills is what get people to experience actual psionic events through psionic skill sets. So the whole goal is to take someone who knows nothing from a square 0 through a process in which in some weeks or months of daily practice, they will start to experience reality on a psionic level.
Did you utilize psionics in order to break through your memory repression?
Absolutely. There wasn't a template when I had to do it, since I was one of the first people that had to do it. So luckily, we've developed a system and a process and a protocol that works much faster and much better than what I had to do. But yeah, I had to fumble through each individual step and figure out how my brain and my mind and my own psionic will could overcome or correct the things that were not working correctly. So I had to internally, do this equivalent of, taking a pile of Lego blocks that's been broken into a mess and like reorganize and put them back together in such a way that it actually looks like a structure of something. So I had to take a pretty broken brain and fix it. And the only way that I was going to fix that was with internal psionic skill mastery. And yeah, it was hard. It took years and years because of that, because I had to start from this utter square one with no template, no advice, nobody giving me pointers. It was just, I had to just figure it out.
So through psionics, you were able to piece together your 17 years in the MDF, your tour on Sonora, the fact that you have a son on Sonora.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The memory retrieval took like 10 years. It doesn't have to take that long for people who are doing memory retrieval now. Again, we have a process that's way faster than that. But for me, it took 10 years. It was 10 years of like getting chunks and having to absorb and process those chunks, re-traumatize myself in some cases, re-grieve over the loss of certain people. It was awful and tedious and time consuming. But yeah, the only way that I could do it was with, and I don't know how I could over or under emphasize this, but to use specific, really targeted mental focus in a way that I had never had to do before. on internal things, to fix and repair things internally that I'd never had to do before. It was a deep challenge. It was a deep challenge, but I knew that if I didn't do it, I was going to be broken. My brain was going to be broken my whole life, and I would never function again. And I could remember the feeling of what it was like to be that person, to know like, no, this is not right. Something's wrong here, and I have to fix it so that I can remember what's right. And all I can say is that thought was strong enough to keep pushing me through, even when I didn't understand enough, when I didn't know enough, I wasn't sure where I was going or what I was doing with it. There was a sense of like, no. There's something back here that I can't quite get my brain wrapped around, but it's got all the answers, and it's in my past, and I have to dig it up. And in order to dig it up, I have to get a shovel and start digging through mental stuff and emotional stuff. And that, as you get through those layers, it becomes increasingly challenging to do it with just cerebral process. You have to start doing things with old psionic tools. I mean, tools that have been around a long time, for people to fix stuff in their brain before we had modern tools, which in some cases can work better and faster, but only if you have access to them, which I didn't. I didn't have access to any of those cool new tools. I had to use all the old tools.
How did you begin? Like, did you have anyone to show you the way, or were you working blind completely? Had to figure everything out.
I knew that meditating was the first most important step to getting into my own brain and my own mind and sorting that out. I knew that much. So I did seek out learning and teaching in meditative practice wherever I could. So I certainly spent a certain amount of time in study of Tibetan techniques, Zen Buddhist techniques, yogic techniques, Sikh techniques, which, interestingly enough, even as different as they are, there's still some basic mechanics of physics which are the same. And so I think, luckily for me, though, what I had was a physics background more than anything, so that anytime this other information was coming to me, I would take a look at it and go, okay, but what does this mean in terms of physics and math? And the more that I could take those teachings and informations and translate them into physics and math, the more useful they became, because the center and basis of what I was doing was not based in mysticism or spirituality, it was based in physics and math. And so everything had to make sense in physics or math, or it was not real. If it doesn't make, and let me go a step further, if it doesn't make sense in math and physics, it's not real, because anything real has to make sense in physics and math. That's like a rule in the universe. That of all the times that I've ever had the luxury of sitting at a diplomatic meeting, talking with other extraterrestrials, this is a commonality that comes up again and again and again. When you get to these bare bones conversations, after you've talked a lot about, well, do you guys drive cars down streets too? Oh, you do? That's cool. Oh, you don't? Oh, okay. Like, I mean, you get this kind of the basic conversations, you get into more fundamental conversations. There's always one answer that I have heard mouthed from every single species I have ever sat in a diplomatic conversation with. And it's when they say, look, the only thing you really have to learn is the math and physics you do not know. And it's the same every time. They say it the same every time. Look, you want the big answer? You want the big universal question? You want the big truth? The only thing there is to learn in the universe is the math and physics you do not yet know. That's it. So everyone puts it in terms of math and physics. No one talks about it in terms of mysticism or spirituality or God or religion. None of them talk about it that way, ever. Well, except if they're talking to someone who can't comprehend it as math and physics. But when they're talking to smart people, it's like, look, it's all math, it's all physics. And something either makes sense in math and physics, or it's not real, or you haven't understood the laws of math and physics that make sense yet. But everything can either be understood in math and physics, or it doesn't really exist.
All right, Randy, another time out. Back with more of our conversation. Colonel Randy Cramer, psionics. Stay with us. Colonel Randy Cramer is with us, and he will be appearing, zooming in to the Contact and Disclosure Symposium happening in Toronto at the Off-World Bar. That's down on Queen Street West in Toronto. ContactandDisclosureSymposium.com to order tickets and more details, and the link is in the episode notes. Now, the one of the hosts of Contact and Disclosure Symposium, Leslie Mitchell Clark, her forte, of course, in hypnotic regression. How deep can hypnotic regression take you? I mean, can it only go so far, and then psionics takes you to the next level, or how does that work?
That's a really good question. And so the answer to that is really determinant of which tools have been used on the individual mind that we're referencing to here in order to block those memories from access from the subconscious to the conscious. So there are very advanced technological tools, some of which involve, encrypted information or encrypted codes. Think of it like that you have to crack a safe with someone's brain in order to get to that information. And it's not left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. It's that dialing in, that cracking of the safe has to be done with a computer that can run decryption faster than the encryption can run. So the systems that we've been using are off-world systems, off-world diagnostic systems that can analyze what locking mechanism that we're using or has been used on that particular mind and that particular brain, and then reverse backwards engineer how you have to pick that lock to remove the block. So hypnotherapy is going to get you some progress, and it's going to get you to probably, if anything, be able to grab some of the most emotionally traumatic memories, because those are the ones that are going to want to push to the surface the most anyway, and they're the ones that are going to be the most escapable from that locked system. So, but there's some limitation that any kind of hypnotherapy or even just meditative regression is going to bring you to limits, without having to. I mean, I had to sort of do the equivalent of wandering through a maze in my brain and coming across like each barrier and having to deal with each barrier. One of the reasons why it took 10 years. That's not feasible for most people. And to be honest, with the newer coded systems, that wouldn't even work. So we actually were using a protocol that was working with older subjects, like people who'd been in older programs. And then all of a sudden I was working with a bunch of people who were younger and had been in younger programs, and those tools didn't even work anymore because the encryption system had changed. So the tools that we were using, essentially a set of picks that would never have worked on a newer subject because of the system that was used to lock up their memories. So my hat is off, and I will applaud anyone and everyone who does the work of regression therapy on anybody and everyone in trying to help them sort stuff out. But chances are that if you want to get total recall, you're going to need special tools. And those special tools are the only thing that we know that work to 100. That to get total recall, it's the only thing that we know of that work. That's not going to take 10 or 20 years of personal work. Who's got that? I wish I hadn't had to spend that much time on it. I feel like a ton of my life was wasted by me having to spend that much time on it, except it wasn't wasted because it was important. But gee, I wish I could have been doing some other things for those 10 years.
Are there any risks or dangers in these practices, psionics?
Not in psionics itself, no. Because we're kind of overlapping memory retrieval here. Memory retrieval can be dangerous. There are inherent dangers with a system in which those who do not wish people to remember sometimes put in heavy defenses that can, we call them landmines. And if you hit a landmine, things can go south pretty fast. So there's, again, ways to do that to avoid landmines and so forth. As far as like meditation, psionic practices, there is one, and I find myself being one of the only people that ever talks about this, interestingly enough, which bothers me that other people don't talk about it. But I think it's because other people don't talk about it because they don't want to scare people away, and they would rather make money from people instead of like tell them the truth and give them like a rational understanding of what's happening. But there is something that occurs when you develop your brain, your mind. You're doing these psionic brain curls on a regular basis. That we call this the development process, the psionic mental self-mastery development process. And something occurs. Eventually, you end up with something called psionic emergence, which is when you kind of go from being a muggle, the way we call it, kind of going from being a muggle to having a psionic brain that is perceiving and understanding the world in a psionic way all the time, right? You're not just like back and forth. You're kind of like, oh, I see this all the time now. My third eye's open. I see this, all my pineal seeing this. I hear this, like all these extra senses, psionic senses are operating and they're functioning all the time. And you kind of move out of your muggle space. So there is this fine line between psionic emergence and psionic emergency. And the most common place that this occurs is meditation intensives, where people are like, there's a 5-day, a 7-day meditation intensive, and someone's like, boy, I really need to buff up my meditation practice. And they go to one of these intensives at a, Buddhist seminar or retreat somewhere for like days, where they're meditating 5 times a day, every day, all day. I mean, and what can happen is people can kind of blow open their mental processes and start to hear and see things that end them up in mental hospitals temporarily. I mean, this has happened a lot more than most people would like to discuss it about, and especially meditation teachers and so forth who don't like to talk about this, because this is really the only thing that they're missing, right? Is that when you're teaching your kid to drive, you teach them this thing can go too fast. You don't want it to go too fast. You got brakes for a reason. You got gears for a reason. You got a steering wheel for a reason. And it's so you don't just hit the gas and fly in a straight line as fast as you can and then hit the first wall you come up against and die, right? That's not how you drive a car. Well, meditation teachers don't teach meditative students that your brain is the same way. They often teach that meditation is like this car, this race car that you want to get in and just hit the gas. And it's like, no, you want to balance out your brake and your gas, and you want to like you adjust your gearing. You don't want to push so hard, so fast that you end up crossing that line from emergence into emergency. And the real method here of not allowing that to happen is teaching people to use their brakes. Teaching people to just go a little slower, to just take your time a minute. But so many teachers, and I've seen this so many times, they get very excited. Understandably, I can get very excited about it, about what's happening in the mind and the things and psionic emergent things that are happening. They're very exciting things. But there's a Venn diagram of what can happen here with an emergence where, and this is where someone can mistake calling this a spiritual experience. It's not. It's a psionic experience. Spirituality actually doesn't exist. Psionic physics exists. People get mad at me sometimes when I say that, but spirituality doesn't exist. Psionic physics exists. But there's a place that can overlap here, and you can end up going into hypomania, mania, depression, manic depression. There are actual psychiatric states that you can induce by pushing your brain chemistry in ways that are a little unbalanced, where Meditation, you're playing with your brain chemistry in a good way, right? You're adjusting dopamine, serotonin, cortisol levels. You're bringing your cortisol down, bringing dopamine and serotonin up. But as you get good at that, you come to a place where you realize that you can get way too high. I mean, literally high. I could meditate and get so high if I wanted to just pump up all my brain chemistry that I could come out of a meditative experience and I could feel like I was on psychedelic drugs if I wanted to, but I know not to do that. As an experienced meditator, I know to recognize what's happening with my neurotransmitters and go, oh, let's dial serotonin back a little bit. We don't want that going up too high. Oh, no, we can dial dopamine back a minute. We don't want that going too high either. Oh, let's dial cortisol down, but you want to adjust these things and not just pump the gas. And most meditation teachers, most meditation schools, most methods don't teach this at all. And I consider it a crime that you're not teaching people to just like use the tools. Use your brake, use your gas and your brake, use your gearing system, use your tools of adjustment to find your sweet spot instead of pushing too high. Most of what's happening are people in this low space mentally, sort of biochemically, that when you start to meditate a lot, it comes up, and it can come up quite a bit. But again, you go too far and you go crazy. And there are plenty of examples of people who have gone too crazy doing this because they just didn't put the brakes on because no one taught them to dial it back for a second instead of pushing too far. So the only danger is pumping on the gas too hard without using your brake. I mean, and that danger happens only when people don't know that it's a danger or they're not being cautious about what they're doing. The only danger is not being safe. The only danger is being dumb. The only danger is being unaware of the power that you're applying your foot to the gas pedal on that could splatter you all over a wall before you get airborne. I mean, I'm mixing metaphors here now, but there's a place where you can get airborne without hitting that wall, but you got to do it right. You know, planes don't just get off the ground by going really, really fast. There's some mechanics involved that has to happen right. So the only inherent danger is stupidity and people not paying attention to what they're doing, or people being taught that you just want to pump the gas and get out of your earthly, terrestrial, physical experience. You just want to leave that entirely and you just want to get all out of that. No, that's bad. That is actually really bad. People hurt themselves. People end up in hospitals. People end up homeless, living in their van because of this. I've run into way too many spiritual people who blew out their freaking brains and are living in a van, eating, out of dumpsters because that's what their spiritual experience brought them because they didn't dial it back and they didn't ground it out. Oh my God, grounding. Centering keeps all of that from happening. And so there's way too many schools and thoughts and teachers of meditation that don't teach proper grounding, that don't teach proper centering, and don't teach their students to dial back. And I'm going to say a dirty truth on why that is. And it's because when people are brain high, they give cult leaders more money. And so there are people that want their students to do that because they will just give them more money when they're brain high than if they're doing something that's rational and healthy and safe for themselves to do. So there's an environment which encourages a lack of safety and a lack of understanding because it pads people's pockets.
So now that you've issued a rather dire disclaimer there, potentially, let's talk about the upside. So
I don't even want to say it's a dire disclaimer. I want to say it's the thing that nobody talks about, which is why I have to scream about it so loud when I do. It's just because no one else ever talks about it.
Okay.
But the truth is, if you just take a meditative practice at a regular pace, like a normal person, you balance it out with the life that you're living in, and you understand that grounding your energy is a regular thing you do when you meditate, and that if you feel yourself getting too up into the cosmos, bring it down a minute. As long as you do that, no problems. No problems. There's no inherent danger to using ladders as long as you climb a ladder safely. right? There's no inherent danger to a ladder unless you do dumb stuff and you're swinging around like a monkey and going, look at my no hands. Like that's when people fall off of ladders. But if you, one rung at a time, you place your hands and your feet carefully, no inherent danger to a ladder. The inherent danger is being dumb on a ladder, being unaware on a ladder, not paying attention to where your hands and feet are on a ladder. But the inherent danger of the ladder is not the ladder itself. It's the action of the person climbing the ladder.
Okay, fair enough. So let's just walk us through some of the changes a person would expect doing this kind of work in psionics.
Sure. One of the first things that people usually notice is dream retention, their ability to focus and retain what's happening in their dreams, which is good. That's a subconscious pool of stuff that's happening. It's good to remember and know what's going on there. Increase in memory is another one that comes up. Long term, when I say long term, I just mean really daily practice for weeks or months. That's long term in this situation. We're not talking, it doesn't take years or decades to do this. The other thing that people will notice early on with dedicated practice is IQ jumps. IQ jumps in IQ points is the most common thing. Increase spatial memory, spatial calculation, the ability to like come into a room. And if you had furniture in a truck outside, you would be able to look at the room and go, okay, chair's going to go there, couch is going to go there. And you'd be able to see it in your brain without getting out a tape measure because your spatial memory increases to a level where you can all do it in your head. The ability to just start doing math in your head faster than you would have to sit down and write it out starts to happen. It's brain power, memory, cognitive ability, retention, IQ points, like all of these things start to go up as you increase in your skill level of meditation because you're increasing the pathing between your conscious and your subconscious brain. And the subconscious brain is several hundred IQ points higher than your conscious brain. So if you're a slightly above average person, you got 110 IQ, your subconscious has an IQ that's 300, right? Your subconscious is fucking genius, but you have to talk to it and get it to communicate in a language you can understand and decode that language before that starts to happen. But as you do this, you are gathering the power of your subconscious into your conscious brain more and more and more. And what's there? Everything. Literally everything you've ever learned, everything you've ever thought, everything you've ever experienced, everything you've ever remembered, everything is in your subconscious, and its ability to process and calculate information is vast. So the greatest impact that we get from meditation is a better mind and a better brain. Again, this is why I do this curling motion. You're strengthening your brain, you're strengthening your mind, you're building muscle in your brain and your mind. And the stronger and more powerful your mind and your brain are, the more it can do. And that literally is measured in cerebral impacts, in IQ points, EQ points, PQ. We call the 3 Qs IQ, EQ, and PQ. And there's actually this relationship between the three of them as they develop, they all go up. Unless there's one lagging behind, and then that will be the one that holds you up until you move that one. And it's usually EQ. It's usually your emotional quotient, but they all start to go up. So your IQ will, if you continue through the process without struggling with the process against yourself so much, which happens, your IQ is going to increase, your EQ is going to increase, and your PQ is going to increase. So your intelligence, your emotional intelligence, and your psionic abilities will increase over time as you do this. It's just going to happen.
Randy Cramer's
so it's amazing. It is amazing. It is the most amazing, easiest thing that any person can do to make themselves superhuman. Because the only thing that we can really change to make ourselves superhuman, I can't just drink mutant water and get like rock for arms. That's comic book stuff. But I can change my brain and I can change my mind and I can make them stronger than what I could possibly conceive it could be. So the one super skill and the one superpower that we can achieve that is humanly achievable by our own efforts right here. And it is through that meditative practice of skill building that can build our mind and our brain to superhuman levels. Because once you start to experience a certain amount of psionics, it's an edge. It's always an edge. What you can see, what you can perceive, what you can understand, what you can do, all becomes an edge against not being able to do those things. That's personal evolution. As someone who, when I was in philosophy classes, was often drawn to existentialism, and I'm going to go off the rails for a second. People are going to lose people. Existentialism. But existentialism at its very core is a philosophy of self-development. It is a philosophy that says we as human beings can change ourselves, develop ourselves, make ourselves grow, be better through self-improvement and through focus and discipline. It's the essentials of existentialism. But that psionic development is at its core an existentialist reality where you can train and build and focus your brain and your mind and evolve as a human being. And it's the only thing that you can. It's the only way that you can evolve personally as a human being. It's the only thing that you can do to get yourself to evolve personally as a human being is focus on the development of your brain and your psionic mind.
Colonel
So it's awesome. It's amazing and it's wonderful, and everybody should want to do it because it's amazing. And what it would turn your brain and your mind to is an amazing version of yourself.
Colonel Randy Cramer's School of Psionics and the website, the link is in the episode notes if you want to learn more and sign up. And in the meantime, Colonel Randy Cramer will be zooming into the Contact and Disclosure Symposium happening in Toronto on April the 20th, and that's at the Off-World Bar on Queen Street. And the link for that, contactanddisclosuresymposium.com, also in the episode description. Randy, great to speak with you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Richard. Appreciate it.
Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there.